She squealed excitedly. It may look like something that you would love. The rigid cardboard box of R2 Verm, for its apparent age, was marked with a black serap. Fanthered Peter's Place. The cover image depicted a titchy plastic figure painted purple striding slowly forwards. A figure seemingly disinterested in the several white plastic figures pursuing it at a far greater pace, and every character powered towards a nearly nondescript house in the distance. Little more than a childlike outline of a home, a triangular roof for windows and a door. The picture contains some indistinguishable shapes of various muted colors. Despite the mint condition of the cardboard, its weathered ink told the truth. There persisted a persuasion moving towards the forefront of my mind, that the faded cover had lost some of its imagery to time-lost secrets that perhaps told us much more about the ancient game. Who would have told us perhaps never to play? Grandma proudly placed the game on the coffee table, and I offered my younger sister the Krinsky smirkus of smugly eyeballing some hidden cameras. She stifled laughter behind bubbling lips, and our grandmother obliviously settled into an armchair. It pains me to sound like a brain-rotted adolescent, but I haven't ever enjoyed board games, so I wondered why Grandma had presumed otherwise. It felt shameful for thinking that way. I knew better around the time I went to university, and my sister entered 6th form. The Templeman family adopted a new stilted dynamic mom, and Dad had changed at first. I thought it had something to do with my sister and I embracing new phases of life. However, a few months ago our parents finally revealed that Grandma was displaying some early signs of vascular dementia. We hadn't been too surprised during the holidays. Michael and I often spent a few days at our grandmother's house, and we had noticed her cognitive decline over the years. With this new knowledge, of course, we realized it was more serious than that. We realized that our time with her was precious and fleeting. We would have done anything to make her remaining days pleasant. Whether it had been a 3-hour marathon of Antiques Roadshow or an evening on some dull or game. What are the rules? EMT Gray. In Damask, me lifted the lid, wincing as it loudly scraped against the sides of the box. For a moment, I almost needed a strain as if the lid were wrestling with me, as if it were unwilling to reveal what lay beneath. But I eventually came free. You need to hit the gem spaghetto, and Michael laughed. You unleashed Damash to backhanded swing it, thumping my sister on the nose with the cover of the box. Sheer coiled behave children, Grandma chuted before he suddenly glazed. Where did you get this game? Looks fun, I said, feeling the mood in the room lower. It was you bought it for his grandma. Oh, she softly responded before clearing throat uncomfortably. Yes, that's right, sorry, so let's shall we? I just need to read the rules first. I chuckled. And you need to explain them to us, you dirty cheater. Michael added. I will, I said, rolling my eyes. I'll repeat them word for word. And you'll spend about 20 minutes reading the entire rulebook just to check that I didn't lie to you. That sounds about right? Michael nodded. And then none of you will have to read the mallet a second time because Olive forgotten. Grandma jiggled my sister and I laughed along, but there was a hint of sadness in that moment of joy. Grandma's wit still cut sharply whenever it poked above ground, but that edge it become blunter over the months. It was a side of her, much like all sides of her, that were early so after the diagnosis. Whatever remained of Grandma, in terms of who we knew, was slowly dying, and grief is torturous when the body but not the mind of a loved one lingers before you, for there may still be moments of that person that you used to know, painful reminders of that gradual deteriorating. On to fill the pained pause that followed the round of laughter, I explained the rules in Peter's Place. The house is home, the place which safeguards all that is dear to you, all that you wish to hold and never let go. You have been displaced and you must return to your pleasant abode. However, you are not the only with eyes on that shining beacon in the darkness. Peter is seeing that you have woken far from home, and he hungrily eyes this opportunity to take everything that you love, you and your teammates, each moving a white piece 1 or 2 squares per turn, must work together. Retoriach the house at the end of each round. When all players have taken a turn, Peter, depicted by the purple piece, will move 1 square closer to the same destination. You win if every teammate reaches the house before him. You lose if it becomes Peter's place. You may be faster, but he's far more cunning. Peter knows that legs grow weary, the journey will weathery. Perhaps event taking everything pot. The other hand cannot be slowed, cannot be stopped. He moves steadily. Every turn you will move in whichever direction you so please. There are many possible routes always. The same destination, however, to wine. Every single player must reach the house before Peter. After moving your piece, you will pick up an item card, adding it to your collection, and a choice card. The cards must correspond with the color, either red or green, of the square in which you landify. You land on an event square. You must also draw a corresponding event card. If a player reaches the house item and choice cards do not need to be drawn. However, if all players have crossed the line, draw one final event card to determine your victory or failure. It may be red or green. This is no game of Chance, no matter the situation presented, you decide the way. Peter is an ambitious man, Peter is an inquisitive man, Peter is a Bovilils, elf-serving man. To him, a house is not a home, it is food, and he will stop at nothing to take it from you, to take everything from you. Understand that you may win today, but nothing lasts forever. One day, the courses in soft time will rot your door to the ground. One day, Peter will have his place. When all players are ready, the house will open, and the game will begin. Grandma sighed. That was a mighty mouthful. Most of it simply set the scene. The rules actually seem quite straightforward. I assured her, I know it's a strategy game, but it'll be easier than chess. Think of it that way, Grandma, you're good at chess, and plus we have to work together, so we'll help you out, Michael added, and we won't have to worry about EMT cheating to beat us. What sparked this EMT as a cheater crusade? I asked, laughing. Monopoly 2015 Mayfair Gate, my sister bluntly explained, is snorted even louder. I was 10 years old, you put 5 houses on it, EMT. 5, Michael. Art, the max is 4, and you know it and you knew it. Then 2. Nobody stopped me. I shrugged, grinning. It's good life lesson, Michael. You've got to keep your eye on the ball. You know, pro. Perdai developmentice, a ruthless game, my sister huffed. While unpacking the box, she started to unfold a large cardboard square onto the carpet, revealing an entanglement of various cross junctions and overlapping routes. There were dozens of ways to reach the plate. Whose story house with no discernible features. Some roads passed through a dense woodland, and others passed through an abandoned town. My eyes wandered across to different passages, trying to ascertain which pathway would be the quickest. The most direct route to the house squeezed between the woodland and the town. However, I counted a greater number of green than red squares on the tempting road, and something told me that grain might bring far worse odds. Peter's place nerved me for areas that I didn't understand. I found myself not want to eye the board forward for a prolonged period of time. What if I got your hands on EMT? Grandma asked, waking me from the trance. I had been so transfixed that I forgot that I had plucked an old cotton bag from the box. I loosened the drawing to find a dusty heap of plastic figurines at the bottom, 3 white and 1 purple. As I removed them from the backhand, trembling, my sister laughed. What are the odds? It's as if it were made for us. She said something about that sent shivers down my spine, though. I internally chastised myself for being frightened by a coincidence. I was trying to make sense of the fear response within my body, embarrassed that I was growing increasingly afraid of something as banal as a board game. There were starting squares set in the bottom corners of the board, one on the far left for the main players and one on the far right. Peter. I placed the 3 white pieces who were frozen in sprinting poses on our starting square, and the purple figurine frozen in a brisk walking pose was placed on the opposing square at Peter's feet. A purple square rolled to the house, circumventing both the woods in the town. Noobstacles, no great rush needed. He would creep to the same destination. A sus on square a time. We're in a hurry, aren't we? Grandma laughed, picking up one of the white figurines and admiring it. It's been quite a few years since I was able to run like this. And look at Peter, Michael said, pointing at the figurine. He's hardly even trying. Or ready to start? I asked. Or would we rather watch TV now? The television sets will be there in an hour or so, Grandma said. Let's play. I'm bold of you to think that we'll finish that quickly, Michaela said, who's first and given my churning gut. I wanted to refuse, but I knew my grandmother might have very few lucid days left. I realized that we had to cherish nights like that. One assumed she might not be able to play board games at all. I thought soon she might not even recognize my face. It doesn't say. I eventually replied, Grandma, do you want to start? We'll go clockwise. You, Michael? I mean, then Peter's your grandma's mild. You'll have to move the piece form, though it'll hurt my back to keep clambering out of this chair. Our size aid lifting one of the white pieces, there came a sharp click from the hallway, startling the 3 of us, and our eyes shot at the back door, which stood as terror. A moment later, we were all laughing at our skittish reactions. Well, I suppose that means the game begins. Michaela said, sorry, dearies. Grandma apologized. That latch has been on the blink for yawns. I'll shut it. Azedo, don't bother, Mitt. The door will only do it again, she called as I bounded into the hallway. I closed the unlatched back entrance, and my eyes were drawn to the pattern glass, which barely allowed a nigh visibility of the field beyond Grandma's cozy back garden, but my gaze met something in the distance, illuminated by the dusky red light of that strange time post-sunset, a height in the forest, dark and shapeless, watching me with eyes that couldn't be seen, driven by some forest beyond me. I opened my mouth to release a sound of scream, terrified and helpless in the face of whatever surveyed me. Michael shouted from the living room, are we playing or not? My lips sharply rejoined into I controlled my breathing, wondering what I had just experienced, wondering how to rationally explain it to myself, given that I had never suffered from any mental illness, given that I had never believed in anything beyond what could be seen, heard, smelt, or touched. But on that night, I didn't doubt that something lurked in the forest. Something with intent neither cruel nor kind, something that didn't feel at all. Which way would you like to move? I asked quietly as Ira entered the room. I don't know, Grandma chuckled towards those lovely trees, perhaps nodded as sitting on the carpet and veiling my emotions as I didn't want to be teased for odd behavior. Oro square or u squares, but why two? Of course, the faster we went, the better, Grandma said. I pushed her piece forward and she landed on a green square in the forest as I reached towards the green pile of item cart. I still struggled to shake the feeling that red would be safer, but it had to be tested. I was relieved and slightly amused to read the item card that I had drawn from my grandmother. It depicted a rectangular wrapper branded with the words Brands Grove, Oats You Eared Yourself, a chocolate bar. Aloft, handing the item to her, grandma gleefully took the cards, squinting through reading glasses to inspect it for herself. Her strong smile gradually softened into something level, something cold. I had never seen her that way. She was only ever bright and jovial woman who always radiated warmth, but Asher's sunny disposition had departed. A chill swept over my flesh, riddling it with goosebumps. My sister drew a green choice card from the top of the pile and read it quietly. Oh, what does it say? I quote, you wait through as to DG puddle clogged by brittle flakes. It is far deeper than expected. The liquid rises above your frail ankles, threatening to swallow you. Do you jump out and skirt around the pool, moving one square backwards, or do you isk seizing an airnearby branch to free yourself, moving one square forward and adding this choice card to your personal supply? My object to the notion that I have frail ankles. Grandma gasped, bending forwards with a wincing, scratching the fabric on her left sock. Oh, I know. I'm in a hurry. I'll step out of the puddle. Nodded, moving her piece one square backwards. Seems like the safer option to me. Oh, really? There didn't seem to be any downside to pushing forwards. Michaela said, it's sad that you would have to keep the choice card. I pointed out. I have a hunch that we might be punished for having certain things in our supplies. Who knows what we'll draw later. Oh, the rules didn't mention that, my sister replied. The game has unwritten rules. Thought to myself, shuddering as the darkness of the woods filled my fractured mind. Whatever, Peter's low isn't a right. It's my turn. Micah said, eagerly pushing her piece 2 squares along a different road. That makes sense, to try another way. And I'll pick up this red item cardo. Wow, a shovel, maybe you'll dig us out of some dire situation. I suggested, trying to perk up. She grinned. Yeah, lure hit you. Oh, Verth ahead with it. If you annoy me anyway, let me read this choice card. You find a bicycle propped against a nearby tree, and you take it moving forward an extra 2 squares, or leave it staying on your present square. Leave as Ed Micker rolled here eyes. You're no fun. We'll be playing until sunrise. At this rate, it seems risky. If you move 2 squares forward, you'll land on an event space, as Ed, pointing at the boards. So why are you assuming that events will be bad? My sister asked, pushing her piece forward. I'll take the bicycle. I guess I'll be picking up our event card here. Wego, my eyes started to lose focus at the edges, and my throat elongated, feeling like concrete eyed elastic at the same time. I realized that I hadn't breathed in roughly 20 seconds. I had been watching Michaela with a horrified expression as she silently read the card without revealing her thoughts. What does it say? Dear Grandma asked, smiling in a way that implied as she had forgotten whatever had unnerved her. You become distracted by something in the forest. My sister eventually said, you see a lamb entirely out of place, being circled by wild foxes. The predators viciously tear the helpless creature limb from limb by are so distracted, in fact, that you miss your following turn. And Peter smiles. After all players have finished this round, he will take 2 steps forward. It told you eyes. Michaela shrugged. It'll be fine. He's still slow. His mild weakly struggling to conceal the burgeoning dreading my body. My turn had finally arrived. I scanned the board, unsure as to which route would be the safe. I was starting to suspect that there may be no safe way, so I followed my sister's lead. It took yet another path, pushing my white figurine 2 squares to the right, heading towards the abandoned town. As I neared Peter's purple path, a shiver coursed through my form from top to toe, and I was certain that I felt a 4th presence in the room, certain that I had heard breathing in the lounge's empty corner, haunted but outwardly composed. I kept playing, told myself that I had started hallucinating, told myself that there may be a leak in the house. I almost excused myself to inspect Grandma's carbon monoxide alarm. I had landed on Ard Square, which felt safer, though I wasn't entirely sure. I bribed myself for fearing a simple game. As I picked up Erdidum, the adrenaline left my body as I read the mundane card. After a few awful seconds of bracing for terror, it was wonderful to feel such as wheat release. It's a torch. I laughed, flashing the card. It very one, a perfectly ordinary item, nothing that upset me, as much as a chocolate bar, of course. I reminded myself that Grandma wasn't well, and that helped to settle my anxious waters. As I reached for a choice card, you find yourself in an empty town. I started frowning as I wondered how the card coincidentally correlated to the route that I had taken. Goo, my sister laughed. You're such as low readers. Ori, as Ed, clearing my throat. You find yourself in an empty town. excited to have reached somewhere. Your unforwards move an extra 2 squares. Your excitement fades as you realize it, that drapes or drawn cars are nowhere to be seen. And every inch of the place appears upon first glance to be uninhabited. But you enter a small store and find a crying girl, palms digging into here. Yay, sounds like every girl's reaction to you. But Michael giggled. Shut up, is Ed, pushing my piece an extra 2 squares forwards. As you get closer, you realize that she's not crying with sadness, but joy. Today's it's a good day. Her face is nothing but a beaming smile. Leontia finally removes her hands to ask what you would like, and do you ask the girl to call the taxi for you, missing your next turn, but moving forwards an extra 5 spaces, or do you buy some things from the shop, picking up 2 extratum cards? I vote that you call the taxi. Michaela said, what do you think? Grandma, sorry, Grandma asked, suddenly returning to, so I lost myself for a sappening. What's happening? Don't worry, Grandma, I said, turning my attention to Michaela. If I call the taxi, I progress 5 space to a green square. You really think the colors matter, don't you? This is a game of chance, not just strategy. Each colored pile is good and bad cards. We don't know that, I said, reaching towards the red pile. If it's I choose to buy some things from the shop. I've got a blanket and a tire air and great additions to my collection. Weird things for the same shop to sell. But okay, Michael replied, right, so we've all finished our turns. Round 1's over, let's move. Pete might have expected the purple figurine to walk on its own, a chord starting to the measured rhythm of some tribal tum-tums. However, I heard only the beat of my overworked heart as my sister pushed Peter 2 squares forwards. No drums and no sign of Robin Williams. Before we continue, I think I should take a trip to the... Well, Grandma said, grunting as she braced herself on both armrests of the chair. Oh, I'll take you, Michaela said, abruptly standing and catching the game's empty box with her foot. Careful. Is that as the seaboard flipped? Oh shoot, Grandma said as my sister helped her out of the room. I should really be thinking about dinner, shouldn't we? Mitt said, that'll get takeaway for us. Michaela replied, it's late, though you're riled at now. I distantly said, I am the underside of the box, as my grandma slowly exited the room, arm supported by sister. I closely observed the overturn. Ed box hastily itched into the back, seemingly with the sharp G of a blade was a message, can't kill it, don't play it. There was an unsettling urgency to the penmanship or swordsmanship of the messages. Anonymous author, it would be rational to interpret the words as evidence of the previous owner's bizarre sense of humor. Still, that wasn't what I believed, though you may as well be tiring of me saying such things without any notable evidence. I simply wanted to delay telling the story of what happened. After I staggered across the driveways, wet cascading down my plane slumped into me car, but I will tell you, must Michaela and I usually, without our parents, visited Grandma often, and the nearby village, like so many secluded parts of Wales, had always been a sleepy and idyllic place, a place mostly inhabited by petrels and not people. However, on that game night, a little after dusk, the town's character had changed. The sleeping land had perished entirely. Still haunted by what I had read on the back of the box, it took a few seconds to process the new air in the village. As it followed Little roads, I almost forgot why I had come to the own due to gurgling stomach reminded me. Whether the pain had been a sign of hunger or fear, I still do not know. What I wanted more than anything was to turn around, return to Grandma's house, and scorch the game until all that remained were ashes. Can't kill it. As I pulled into the car park of the local supermarket, I inwardly repeated that sentence. The haunting shapes of those letters were engraved into both the box and my eyes. I'd arranged to scrawl searing holes into my retina. I was so afraid that I hardly noticed my surroundings, which still leaves me thankful that I may well have overlooked certain horrors. The ones that I did witness were terrible enough that the shop's glass panes released a white glow onto the streets, a glimmer of hope in that dark place, yet my dread grew as I neared the automatic doorway, and when I entered the supermarket, much to my displeasure, I found nobody around. 8 on a warm Saturday evening in the middle of spring, the local store was empty. It's a small town. I reminded myself, what is wrong with you tonight? Get a grip. A sudden vibration stuck my side with a hot poker, and I jolted before reaching into my jacket pocket. I barely noticed the sound of my phone on this night. However, the metallic buzz chode loudly down the silent tiles, though, as I rustled around to retrieve my phone. I convinced myself that I had heard a distant door's wing. An idiot, I answered. Who? Why are you so grumpy? Michael asked. Because this town is dead. You're only supposed to be grabbing food, not finding a nightclub. Yeah, well, you're slowing me down, I pointed out as he entered the aisle for frozen food. What do you want? Grandma took her turn, killed aside, and I just skipped in. Remember, so it's you to go. What do you want to do? Scoffed and didn't want to wait for me, huh? Just moved my piece through the town. How many squares? And I hate to tell you that the next few are all green. She teased. H better make it 2 squares. Then I absently replied, trying to ignore the awful atmosphere in the supermarket. Well, I'll pick up the dreaded green item for you, Michaela said, pausing for a few seconds. See, why were you worrying? You got a broad's word. I laughed, momentarily forgetting my unease. What am I going to do with the broad's words? Word stuff, my sister said. Broad stuff, I asked. Exactly a right grumpy choice, Cardi. You passard lake at great pace, moving an extra 2 squares forwards. Yai. I'll grimace at the unknown liquid beside you, and in hands emerge from the depths. You watch as 2 drowning souls burst through the surface, begging to be rescued. Do you save the rabbit, fox, or the lamb? That's all that it says. I asked, wondering about rewards and punishments. That's all it says. IA in a need stack of margarita pizzas in the C supermarket's freezer. Well, I don't see how it affects the game, but I suppose it should save the lamb. Yeah, I'll save the lamb. Cool, well, it's your go, Grandma. Hurry up and come home, Emmett. I don't want to call you every time it's your turn. I unspe. Curry asked, no, how's Grandma? I found myself asking quietly, thinking about the Brands Grove at Sparrow Michaela. Discarding my torch and blanket to no. How will we win? Oh, my sister laughed, pushing Peter forward 1 space right. You to go. Grandma's mild. Well, is oppose a move to I don't know. No, you've won, Grandma, I said, pushing her piece over the line with your running shoes. You move 3 squares to the house. It's just Michael and Mel. When I'm going to be braver than you, my younger sibling announced, pushing her piece of 2 squares for a green event square. Oh, but I'm only far away from victory. I fearfully held my tongue as Michaela picked up both an item and a choice. A muddy rat shaloft, tossing the item card into her pile, and then reading her choice card. You face the ones you fear, the ones you thought you would at the week's end, at the island's end. And you realize that time is up. You flee no more. You fight. Do you wield a weapon moving backwards of space, or do you take the pain moving forwards of space? How did it know? My sister started to sweat, face contorting into the same expression of agony that I had worn an hour earlier. Just a strange coincidence. I lead, still hoping to shield Michael. What do you choose? I don't care. Now she whispered. I'm not sure that I want to keep playing. No, I harshly interjected before adopting agent alert in response to these shocked expressions. Sorry, I just look grand as finished. Let's cross the line. Michaela, let's what's up with you? My sister interrupted, a voice trembling. You've been weird ever since Wes started playing, and now that I've drawn this card, I feel weird too. Think it might be time for bed, Grandma blankly said. We have to keep playing. Explain shakily, please, Michaela. Just tell me what you choose. I suggest you wield a weapon. And that sounds safer. Better, fine. I'll wield a weapon, Michaela whimpered, pushing her piece backwards. Does that mean that I don't have to draw the event card? I hope so, I said, pushing my piece 2 squares forwards. And landing out ard square. My item's a horse. It adds 3 squares to everybody's speed for the remainder of the games. We'll both reach the house of the next round, my sister asked hopefully, as swimming with the same petrified realization that I knew Lurton my own. I nodded, treating my choice card. You hover near the edge of the forest to upon at the rear. Die but, which do you wield, the broadsword or the tire iron? Discard the item that you don't wish to keep. How does it know the items that you have? My sister weep. These aren't coincidences, Sema, and you know something. I can see it in your eyes. What's happening? Is this some horrible joke that you wanted to play on Grandma? And did you set up this game? You know that I didn't, I whispered, locking eyes with my sister and Finley, failing to bury the truth. You feel it too, don't you? There's something wrong with this game. But we need to finish it. I would like to got a better, grandmother absent-mindedly said. 1 second, Grandma. I begged to sing my tire iron into the discard pile and said, yeah, she's fine. It still seems aware enough to play. It was sad that she forgot even buying the game wasn't it. Yeah, I said, does she still seem happy, not just lucid? I mean, does she look uncomfortable at all? She's fine, EMT, my sister promised. She probably just wants some food. Hey, in fact, she says my stomach is growling rather loudly. Oh, Grandma just told me off for being cheeky. I laughed. Yeah, that's karma. Alright, I'll see you soon. Soon after the call ended, I picked up 3 pizzas and swiftly returned to reality. The icy reality of a silent supermarket in a silent town. Fear crept back into me bones as I passed a dozen hollow AES, each scorched by the battering glare of overhead lights. I thought of the way that place had lured me inside the only light in the dark. However, with nothing to accompany me but blinding lights and a muted home of refrigerators, I started to long for the safety of the shadows, started to feel exposed in the well-lit supermarket. And it still hadn't shaken that idea of being eyeballed by something. And then when I reached the self-checkout registers at the far end of the stores, something unexpected met my gaze. A ballin' woman, a face buried in her hands, wearing a bright red uniform and Danima tag with legible text. I wasn't relieved to see another human, and that had nothing to do with the shop worker's tears. I'm an empathetic man, but the crying lady sparked non-natural human instinct to rush forward and comfort her. For I sensed she wasn't human, and too frightened to make sudden movement. I feigned ignorance and scanned my pizzas, trying to hide. Trembling hand. However, I struggled to ignore the woman. I wanted to shoot past without uttering a word, straight out of the shop to my car, and then back home, but I did something foolish, something that defied my will. Something habitual. Are you okay? I weakly asked, clutching my bag tightly. At that moment, standing only a few yards away from her, I realized that she was laughing through the tears. Well, it was something adjacent to laughter, something so close to an emotion that one might call happiness, but now not really an emotion at all. That smile peeking from beneath her hands was a warning, and I realized, as much as I had wanted to stay calm, that I had to move. I veered to the side of the woman, but she sharply low. Air at her hand says. I passed. I yelled above the worker's drooling grin shadowed by a brow ridge. There were skin-covered dips that didn't hold eyes, and a nose that was a misshapen love but merging with the TD flash of pale cheeks. Her face is nothing but a beaming smile. The words from that choice card pounded in my head, as I had known on some subconscious level before arriving in the town. There was something wrong with the game, something that had spilled into reality. The woman started to laugh, her body twitching. And then she pounced. I yelled as her hands wiped at me, catchy. Enjamire stand then, it turned blood staining my sleeve, and I ran through the store. What would you like? She hysterically cried, audibly closing the distance between us. I'll see whether we have it in the back. My legs ached from overexertion as I burst through the automatic doors, followed by another worldly cackle that escaped the supermarket. I ran to the car, fumbling with my keys, and then clumsily opened the door and jumped into the driver's seat as I locked everything. Expected to lift my head and face the inhuman shop workers prowled on my bonnet, or pressed against the side window. Whoever the abomination hadn't left the store, and more eerily than that, the building had plunged into darkness like the rest of the town. The dim moon and the soft hue of my car's headlights offered the only illumination in town. As I burnt Tarma scene in knee-jerk said, it was as I left the village that my eyes caught something in the rearview mirror, a fleeting shape that I viewed as a trick of the mind. Much like whatever else I had experienced, the dark outline of a man hundreds of yards behind my car, striding with purpose down the middle of the road. My eyes shot back to the windscreen, and I attempted to control my breathing. But as I followed, empty count, Marai roads back to Grandma House, an unwelcome thought entered my mind, the possibility that the three of us may be the only living people left on Earth. And given what I had experienced, that idea didn't seem deranged. In fact, I fearfully wondered whether we were still on Earth at all after I rolled onto the driveway. Is it in the car for a few minutes, Spitza sitting on the seat beside me, hard, sitting on my tongue. I thought of the woman in the supermarket, the lack of facial features other than that horrid mouth, the terrible laugh which attacked me, these serial things that have rational explanations. I told myself the man in the road event, the sense of being watched. I picked up the shopping bag, painted my face with the false smile, and I opened the car door for Grandma and Michaela. I had to hold it together for them. I had to finish the game. I knew in my gut that there was no stopping it, as much as I longed for us to run away, but I would do my best to shield them from the horror. I'm back, he announced as I had entered the house. Finally, my sister called from the living room. Grandma and I gained some juicy items during our turns. We got pepper spray and a work coats, Hegotherapy, and a pair of running shoes that let her move 3 squares per turn. She'll reach the house during the next round, and we'll be there in only a few more. Mine added, stiffly sitting down and immediately pushing my piece 2 squares forwards. Grandma was 3 squares away from the house. Michael and I were both 6 away, nearly there. Unfortunately, I landed on a red square and nearly avoided an event space. I drew an armor card which promised to protect against a negative outcome, and then I faced a choice TST between moving forward 1 space, losing 2. FM, my items, or moving back 1 space. The lad would have taken me to the event square, so I chose the former. Then pushing Peter and S square forwards. Final round, your turn. Michaela, look, you're going to reach the house. Okay, my sister Helly nodded, pushing her piece 5 square past the finish line. Now you, now me, is Ed, pushing my piece 4 squares forwards. We've made it, it's over. The game's the final event card. My gullah moaned as lessing into my tramp cry. My blood turned cold in a ninja race to the finish. Desperate to put a lid on the game for good, I had forgotten one of the rules. If a player reaches the house item, and choice cards don't need to be drawn. However, if all players have crossed the line, draw 1 final event card to determine your victory or failure. It may be red or green, it's okay. I unconvincingly told my little sister as I picked up their event card. What does it says? He hissed, stifling tears. It's time to put your decisions to the test. You have chosen the routes, and now your bodies must match your words. Before anybody else uttered a word, all light vanished, not only overhead, but outside. It was deeper and darker than that, of course. The world was gone, replaced by one devoid of color. Grandma Michael is screamed into the darkness there. He came no reply from either of them, instead the creaking of large metallic doors. It broke both the silence and the blackness, filling my world with light. Once more a man and a woman entered the space in which I stood, an impressive factory floor filled with large round containers. It appeared to be some sort of processing plant, a humongous machine made of high-speed steel and topped with a sharp-edged funnel. It rocked on its legs in the center of the room. The metal beast was grinding oats that fed into the machine by an intersecting assembly line. How I found myself in that place I didn't know, and my heartbeat only quickened as the man and woman stared right through me, though I did not recognize him. I recognized her from old photographs. It was a younger version of Grandma, perhaps only a year or two older than me, you will learn. Annabelle, the man, who seemed a couple of decades older, bellowed violently. He grabbed a clump of my grandmother's hair and dragged her towards the churning machine in the center of the room. I called to her, rushing forward, but neither of them heard me, neither of them saw me, and my hands slipped through wispy intan. Jeeble Color says is wiped at the malevolent man, who wore a filthy vest and stained jeans. Please, Gerald, my grandma begged, sobbing as the man yanked her towards the running grinder. I could do it. You know, he whispered, feeding her hair into the funnel mere inches from the teeth of the grinder. I put you in one of my chocolates and nobody would know. It would be our little secret for the next few months. I would gradually eat my way through you. Your meat would fill 1,000 bars. Gerald, Grandma cried as she started to taunt there, lowering his hand full of her blonde locks into the open funnel. You're not thinking clearly. Let's just got a bit, okay? It's just one of your bad days. Every day with you is a bad day now. If of mine will entertain why ideas of working in the city if you were to let others gaze upon you. Well, I would do something worse than this. Bell, something far worse, better, that attend this way, my darling. I'll make it quick. In a moment of violent abandon, driven by some primal urge to survive, a grandma transformed from a timid girl into an emboldened fighter. She snatched her husband's lower arm, halting him moments before the first blonde strand was bitten by the frightful metal jaws of the machine. Reflexively, the man's fingers loosened, releasing her. Here Gerald died, her fearfully as stunned by her sudden countermove. What the devil are you doing? Annabelle, unhand my armor. I'll make it far slower. Far before the man finished his sentence, the younger version of my grandmother thrust their husband's hand and arm into the grinder. The man's scream nearly perforated my eardrums. Agodish's entire right arm was devoured by the machine, his wide mouth and eyes filled with a vile shower of blood and chewed meat spat out of the befuddled oak grinder. Rapidly losing strength, that Gerald feebly wrestled with the machine. Sid threatened to tough his body over the top of the funnel, but his pain hadn't come to an end. Grandma seized his other arm and she faced a little resistance from the wounded monster. While slotting the limp limb into the beast, the man's arms were bound to the grinding teeth of the machine for only a few moments. However, before he fell into the hard ground, Grandma froze for that final minute while her husband, hefted with ragged and tattered stumps on his shoulders, bled out, and after he stopped squirming on the factory floor, my grandmother remained still for a further 2 or 3 minutes, as did in spite of the horror that I had already witnessed that night. The evil man's gruesome end is the image which always comes to the forefront of my mind. My younger grandmother surprised me with another layer of terror. I watched as she had heaved the bloody, armless carcass over the edge of the raised assembly line, concealing her husband's body in a deep wave of ODs. Gerald's mangled corpse was carried by the flowing stream towards the grinder, took the man up the slope before finally dumping him into the metallic mouth. Not only what remained of his stumps, but his entire body, our dish rain littered with a soft clump, shot upwards as the machine sought to unclog its gullet with great struggle. However, the grinder managed to process the man, incorporating him into a fresh line of Burrs Grove, lots of chocolate bars. Didn't see how Grandma covered up her crime, which was truly horrific, in spite of its justification, for the room suddenly changed as if blood had smeared the overhead light bulbs. The factory's white glow had turned red, and Annabelle's appearance had altered. Her trauma had morphed into pure, disbelieving horror as she started to age, started to transition before my very eyes from a young woman into the elderly lady that I knew all in a matter of seconds. And then, with a brutal gust that threw the doors open, Grandma's frail form was hurled into the assembly line of oats. Webeth screamed as she was carried the brittle current towards the same faith that her husband had met decades earlier, and as she struggled to stay afloat, I saw in her haunted eyes, regardless of the dementia, that she understood, that she still recognized what she had done so many years ago. Moreover, she finally saw me wherever we were present or past. She saw me help, she wailed, Grandma. I cried out desperate to her, but my eyes were drawn to the open factory doors. A second scream had sounded from outside, and the doorway revealed a forest, the woodland behind Grandma's house. My chest started to rapidly pound as I distinguished 2 shapes bobbing clumsily above the tree.